Well, welcome to the podcast today. My name is Jeff and I'm your host. And our topic today is Ethiopian Jews in the Promised Land. And my guest is Dr. Jennifer Kaplan. Jennifer is the founder and CEO of the Sheba Foundation, an Israeli Jerusalem-based nonprofit that works in association with other humanitarian aid agencies, educational institutions, and Ethiopian Jewish groups to accelerate successful assimilation of Ethiopian Jews into Israeli society. The Sheba Foundation aims to increase employment, equip, educate, and support needy families within the Ethiopian Jewish community. And as CEO, Jennifer's passion is to see Israel's Ethiopian community rise to a new level of independence and success, and to give them hope for a brighter future. Dr. Kaplan, welcome to the podcast today.
Good to be with you, Jeff. Thank you.
Well, it's great to have you, and we are excited about the work that you do there at the Sheba Foundation. And so we want to kind of give people some background as to sort of how this all comes about. So maybe just tell us a bit about yourself. How did you first become interested and involved in Israel's Ethiopian community?
That's a really interesting question that I often ask myself, because it's not something that I intentionally embarked on, but it just happened. After my move to Israel about 30 years ago, I was teaching in a college in Tel Aviv, and in that class there were 2 or 3 Ethiopian Jewish immigrants. And the class had others in there, immigrants from all over the world, but there was just something about the Ethiopians that was really fascinating. And they got to know me and I got to know them. And so a relationship developed just with a handful of Ethiopians. And soon after that, I was invited to take the Amharic program at the college. And I was very quick to say, yes, I'd love to do that. So that expanded my understanding of the Ethiopians and the friendships. And from there it just grew. And I really felt that there was a grace upon the relationship. And it grew from a handful to many families to the entire Ethiopian Jewish community in Israel. I just felt that there was a wonderful connection. And I guess in some ways I could say that I adopted them and they adopted me. And it just grew from there. And so I'm just so grateful to have these wonderful Ethiopian friends. And if I could just add also, I was always very curious, not just to see them in Israel, but also to see them in Ethiopia. And so I made about 6 trips between the year 2000 and 2013 to the areas that they came from. And that was exceptionally good for me to understand the situations that they've come from. It was really valuable.
Well, it's very good. Now, we know that there are Ethiopians mentioned in the Bible. Maybe give us a brief synopsis of the history of Ethiopian Jews and how long have they identified as Jewish people throughout history?
With that question, we need to go back into antiquity, and just to summarize fairly quickly, we need to take ourselves back into the ancient Aksumite kingdom, which really started in about the 4th century BC, but didn't come to its full fruition until about 100 AD to 900 AD. But during that time, there was a king, King Hazena, in the 4th century AD, and he converted to Christianity. And legend tells us that at that time of his conversion, the whole kingdom of Aksum converted to Christianity as well. Now, I need to say where they were located. When we talk about Ethiopia or the Aksumite kingdom, we need in our minds to have a map to locate them in northern Ethiopia today, which is around the Simeon Mountains and the area of Gondar and Tigray, and up into southern Sudan, not all of modern Ethiopia. But when the king converted, we're told that there was a group of Jewish people already in that kingdom, and they said, "We will not convert, we're Jews." And so this is really the first indication we have in that area of a Jewish community. And so as we go quickly through our history, then the next time that we really hear of a Jewish community is a queen called Queen Judith, who actually overthrew the Ethiopian community, the Axumite community, as it began to wane in influence. And so Queen Judith was said to be a Jewish queen. Once again, Ethiopia is such a fascinating country because a lot of what we hear and understand is based on legend. It's based on oral traditions. It's not like other countries. It's in Africa, and this is very much the nature of Africa. So, we hear of Judith, and then after that, the history of the Ethiopians tends to fade, of the Jewish community within Ethiopia tends to fade. What happened to them? Where were they? We don't really know. Did they call themselves Jews? The answer is no. That was a name, Yahud, that was tended to taken by the Christian community, and so the Ethiopian Jews took on the name of the Beta Israel. Beta Israel meaning House of Israel. So they don't really take the name Ethiopian Jews until our modern times when they immigrate to Israel. So that's really a little bit of a synopsis of their history. Very much going into antiquity and something that we don't really have written sources for. But we have biblical hints, of course.
Yes. Yes, and very intriguing history. And one of the things I was interested to learn is that the lion of the tribe of Judah, this Jewish symbol, is also a symbol for Ethiopia. Can you explain that for us? Why is it so important to Israel? Why is it so important to Ethiopia, and especially the Ethiopian Jew?
Okay, so we need to go back again to the Axumite kingdom that we were just talking about. And so out of the Axumite kingdom grew the Solomonic dynasty. So the Solomonic dynasty is based on the story of the Queen of Sheba and King Solomon. Now we know from the Bible that the Queen of Sheba came to visit King Solomon in 1 Kings chapter 10 verses 1 to 13. And everything we know in the Bible we can take as verified and true, but upon that story there is a legend that is written in the book of the Kibra Negist, which is Glory of the Kings. And in that story, which is very much part of the heart of the Ethiopian people, is the story of a son born to Solomon and to Sheba by the name of Menelik, which means from the king. And so Ethiopian tradition says this starts the Solomonic dynasty, which comes through the Axumite kings and then is picked up again in the Solomonic dynasty around 1000 AD and carries on right to this very day. So when you get a root and a descendant who goes right down to King Solomon, you're talking about the lion of the tribe of Judah that starts to become very prominent. So much so that the last emperor of Ethiopia, who was Haile Selassie, was said to be the 225th line from Menelik, King Solomon and Sheba. And so he actually had in his title the Lion of the Tribe of Judah. Also on the flag of Ethiopia up until that time was the Lion of the Tribe of Judah. So this really relates more to the Christian identity because it tended to give them the great authority, the authority of the Ark of the Covenant, the authority of coming from King Solomon in Israel, and it gave them tremendous authority in their religious and even in their political rule. So the Ethiopian Jews would not really regard all of this history as part of their own, But the interesting thing is that obviously when they come to Israel, we've got the line of the tribe of Judah represented in the word Jew, Jewish, Judah, and even here in Jerusalem on our city flag is the line of the tribe of Judah. So there's very much a connection there.
Fascinating. I guess had never made that connection myself before. Now, Jennifer, when I meet Ethiopian Jews in particular, but even many Ethiopian people, there's this fascination and sort of they're enthralled with Israel. Have Ethiopian Jews always had this longing to come to Israel or to return to Israel?
Yes, they have, and that's a great question and observation, because in Ethiopia, among the Ethiopian Jewish community, for many years there was a festival or a ceremony called the Sigd. And the Sigd actually means to prostrate oneself in worship. So once a year, the Ethiopian Jewish priests, who are called Kasim in their language, Amharic, and then going back into Ge'ez, all of the Ethiopian Jews, or the Beta Israel, would climb up a high mountain. Some of them would travel by foot for days beforehand to participate in this festival. And once they got to the top of the mountain, the priests would read prayers of repentance, and then they would begin to pray and read scripture and speak out their desire to return to Zion. And this went over and over many years. It was very much embedded in who they were. We need to return to Zion. And I remember speaking to a friend of mine here who's an Ethiopian Jewish lady, and she was just saying, isn't it wonderful that in my generation, she said, in all the longing we had to return to Zion, she said, I'm here. She said, I'm of the generation that has seen this fulfillment. So, absolutely fascinating. That desire has always been there.
Mm-hmm. And when you say over many years that this festival took place, are we talking hundreds, more?
That's a good question. Hundreds, but as I said, their history fades into a time of history where we cannot put our finger on exactly what they did and what happened. But as far as in living history, we know that, and as far as those that we can ask of the community of the older generation, as long as they can remember, it was something that they always did.
Amazing. Well, let's talk now about, the Ethiopians coming to the new state of Israel. First of all, talk to us about the term Aliyah. What does this mean? What are some of the prophetic scriptures that predict this happening? And I guess I'll ask the third one too. When did the Ethiopian Jews first begin to immigrate to Israel? If we could kind of put that all together in a response.
Yep. Sure. So Aliyah, of course, means to go up, and Jerusalem being surrounded by mountains, you always go up to Jerusalem from north, south, east, or west. And so when one immigrates to Israel, that's the sense of you're going up to something greater, something bigger. You're making Aliyah, you're going up. And so the Ethiopians are no different from that in making Aliyah. And it's a fulfillment of God's promise to bring his people home. So the Ethiopians, I often think, many promises are given to people, but perhaps the Ethiopians waited 2,000 years for this promise to be fulfilled. And may I read a couple of scriptures?
Yes,
that speak
please.
of this. Let me just. So there's a scripture in Zephaniah 3:10, which is often quoted by people who speak about Ethiopian Aliyah, And it's found, Zephaniah 3:10 says, from beyond the rivers of Cush. Now, some translations might say Ethiopia, but whenever we see Ethiopia, we can think of Cush, and we can think of that geographical area again that we just described with the kingdom of Axum and Sudan and Upper Ethiopia today. From beyond the rivers of Cush, my worshippers, my scattered people, will bring me offerings. And so many see this as God's plan and purpose, to not forget those who live in the south, not forget the Ethiopian Jews, the Beta Israel. So that's one scripture. Another scripture is found in Isaiah chapter 11, verse 11, which says, in that day, the Lord will reach out his hand a second time to reclaim the remnant that is left of his people from Assyria, from Lower Egypt, from Upper Egypt, and from Cush. There's that word Cush again. And this is a very special verse to me, in the sense that many years ago when I was in Ethiopia, I found myself in the Israeli compound where they were processing Aliyah of the Ethiopian Jews. It was just a special open door. And I was invited to the synagogue where the Ethiopian Jews were. They had come to learn about Israel, and Israel authorities were processing their Aliyah and their immigration. And I tried to remain very insignificant and just observe. But when they saw me, I was invited right to the front on the podium. And so I was somewhat embarrassed, and I didn't know what to say. But then I thought, well, I'll just open my mouth and see what comes out. So I said to the people, I said, look, I bring you greetings from Jerusalem, the city of the great king, the city of Adonai. And it was translated into Amharic. And as I said, Adonai, the whole congregation of the Ethiopian Jews bowed and said Adonai. And I was just so greatly touched. I thought, surely this is a Jewish community. And I said, God has very big eyes and he sees you. God has very big ears and he hears you. God has a very long arm and he will reach out and he will bring you to Israel. And it wasn't until years later, as I was reading this verse out of Isaiah chapter 11, verse 11, I looked and I saw, isn't that amazing? God does have a very long arm, and God is faithful to bring his people from the four corners of the earth to back to Israel, even from Ethiopia. Those Jews, those Beta Israel, that for many people they thought they were lost. They were not lost to the side of God. So that's their Aliyah.
Yes. When did they first start coming?
Yeah, that's a good question. Very few had come in the early years prior to the 1970s. We know 1948, the nation of Israel is declared, and there were already Jewish people in the land, and they started coming under the law of return with the state of Israel. Not so with the Ethiopian Jews. It was very difficult because the issue is they needed to be declared Jewish by the rabbis in Israel. This was very important, and this was very much a discussion, and very interesting to look back over the history of this in modern times. But it wasn't until 1973 that Sephardic Rabbi Ovadia Yosef said they are Jewish, and he declared that on the basis of them coming from the tribe of Dan. And there are a number of stories about this, none that can be truly verified. But once Ovadia Yosef said that, he had the authority for other rabbis to come alongside and say, okay, we agree. And upon that basis, they were then able to come under the law of return. So in the late 1970s and the 80s, back in Ethiopia, civil war, famine, fleeing into Sudan, refugee camps along with others from Ethiopia. And So in that situation, which was so difficult for them, there was an operation that was started called Operation Brothers, which Israel sent the Mossad. Israel sent the Mossad in, and I don't know if you've heard of the movie Red Sea Diving Resort.
Yes.
It was a movie that was recently made. I mean, of course, it's the Hollywood version, but underneath there are the true facts that this really happened, and that Israel was able to put in Mossad agents into a Muslim country in Sudan and establish a so-called tourist diving resort and use that as a way to go into the refugee camps, to notify the Beta Israel, to pull them out, to bring them on trucks to the sea, to the Red Sea, put them on Israeli ships that were waiting in the Red Sea Gulf area there, and bring them up into Israel. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
So that really kicked off the beginning of more of a mass Aliyah. And the mass Aliyah, of course, it became known as Operation Moses, when Israel swooped in with planes and took 8,000 secretly and on their planes back to Israel. It was a covert operation which was only stopped once. A press release to the world was given, and then the Sudanese government shut the doors and said no more. But the thing is that I just want to say is that 4,000 Beta Israel died en route trying to get out of Ethiopia to these refugee camps. And I think this is a trauma that we don't want to forget. You know, when we see our Ethiopian Jewish friends in the streets in Israel, or we hear this story, we want to know the price that they paid for their Aliyah. It's an amazing story. It's a tragic story in many ways, but it ends in triumph of those that came and their descendants that are being born here in Israel. And then, of course, 1991 Operation Solomon, 40 flights in 36 hours, 14,000 airlifted again before the fall of the communist government in Ethiopia. Incredible story of the Aliyah of the Ethiopian Jews.
It is absolutely incredible and amazing what has been accomplished. And Jennifer, there are still some plans on the table, are there not, to get even more out of Ethiopia?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I just want to make a differentiation now between those that are coming. Those that came under the first couple of operations that we just spoke about, Solomon and Moses, were very much from the Beta Israel community. They were isolated in their villages. They kept themselves separate from the Christian tribes. They were pre-Talmudic in the sense that they knew nothing about Rabbinic Judaism. They kept the book of Leviticus with purity laws for the women, for everything that we read there. They kept it. And they also circumcised their boys on the 8th day. They were very much a Jewish community in that sense. But the ones that are coming now are those that are called the Falasha Mora. And so Falasha is a derogatory term that the Beta Israel never appreciated. But the Falasha Mora, the Mora means the converted ones. So the Ethiopian Jews that are coming now are really ones who converted to Orthodox Christianity in the last couple of 100 years in times of duress. Maybe it was social pressure, economic pressure, whatever it was. But the interesting thing is that even though they, in a sense, left the Beta Israel community, they really didn't join the Orthodox Christian community either. They were left in limbo. And so these are the ones now that Israel is focused on to bring, because why? Aliyah is messy in this, and particularly in this situation, because families were divided between parents and children and grandparents, aunts and uncles. And so, yes, you mentioned what Israel is doing at the moment. Operation Dove's Wings was to bring many of the Falasha Mora, but at the moment we're in what's called Operation Rock of Israel. And so 2,000 were brought last year in the middle of COVID, which is amazing. That Israel is still bringing, still investing. Do you know that I've heard it said it costs about $100,000 to bring and to fully assimilate one Ethiopian Jewish person. And so Israel is making a huge commitment to the community. And we still have about another 3,000 still to come. And so that's where we are at present. And they're waiting to be brought and to make Aliyah.
Amazing. Well, this is all great information, and I know that when the Ethiopians, finally do get to Israel, when they return to Zion, there is a great level of excitement, of relief, of just being so honored and privileged to be there. But when they come, there are some issues that face this community. And just tell us a little bit about some of the challenges and some of the issues that face the Ethiopian community in particular as they assimilate into the country of Israel.
Yes. At the moment, just statistically, we can say there are about 150,000 Ethiopian Jewish people in Israel at the moment per population. About 90,000 of those have been brought through Aliyah, and about 60,000 or so are their children who were born here in Israel. So when the Ethiopian Jews first started coming, there were many issues, some of which don't exist today. But if you can imagine coming from rural areas in Ethiopia, without knowing any Hebrew, without knowing the Hebrew, the Israeli culture, and coming to high-tech Israel and needing to fit in, the cultural gap was huge. By plane, we're about 4 or 5 hours. By cultural gap, where we could say hundreds of years from an agrarian society into high-tech Israel. And so it's little wonder that there was such tremendous struggle, not just by the Ethiopian Jews to fit in, but even by those that worked with them, with the Israeli government and the Saknut and others, to know how to process their immigration, how to assimilate them. So language was a great challenge. Learning the culture was a great challenge. And the youth in particular, even today, still struggle in deciding and working at their identity. Raised in families where, parents are very humble, gentle, from a traditional society, and then the youth are on the streets with the freedom to run around and do all of the things that Israeli children are able to do, and are very verbal and vocal about their feelings. Even the language of Hebrew is very straightforward, and culturally this is such a difference to Ethiopian culture. You can imagine that, and it happened that youth in particular had many problems, and in the early days, many school dropouts, and the highest level of youth suicide, which is very sad, the highest level of imprisonment in youth rehabilitation centres. So this was one focus. Family and employment, often low wages or unskilled jobs, was very prevalent, and still is an issue today. And living in the lower socioeconomic groups of the different areas around Israel, including Jerusalem. So as a result, many felt discriminated against in different ways. Now, whether that was real or whether it was perceived it was very much an issue also that they needed to deal with internally in themselves. Education, a big issue. Lack of funds, lack of resources in homes to help children in school. So all of these issues were huge to begin with. They are it's slowly changing as the next generation comes up, grows up. They say that it takes 1 or 2 generations for any new immigrant into a host society to be fully assimilated. So very much so the Ethiopians. But I do want to say there's wonderful, wonderful success stories. And so we're seeing many in the Ethiopian community go through the higher education system and becoming lawyers and doctors and taking their place as role models.
Amazing.
And I just want to say, I think one of the best role models that we have is our Knesset member, Penina Shato, who is the Knesset member here in Israel for, of all things, immigration and absorption. She came through Operation Moses as a young child. And
Wow.
so what better person could you have leading that department here in Israel? It really is wonderful. And so these new immigrants that are coming, I'm told also many of them don't have as much of a struggle as the early immigrants because they've been so long in the camps and the compounds in Ethiopia that Israel has sent educators. Israel has primed them for their transition into the land. And so that's where we are today.
Well, that's good. And in spite of the challenges, fortunately for at least a group of these folks, you have a passion to help the Ethiopian people and have started the Sheba Foundation. And so just share with us a little bit as the CEO, what is your vision for the Sheba Foundation and for the Ethiopian Jews that you help, and talk about some of the programs that you offer.
Okay, so I established the organization in 2004 here in Jerusalem, and our aim is quite simply to support, to equip, and to facilitate the successful integration of the Ethiopian Jews into Israeli society. And so the main focus that we have is the youth. It's the next generation, because they're the key to the future. And any issues that we have in the community that have been brought because of some of the issues that I have just said, we want to break that cycle. We want to give every chance of success to this next generation. And so that's our vision. That's our vision. And let me just mention a wonderful verse from Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 13. It says there that God will make us the head and not the tail. And so I think this is a wonderful prophetic picture over the Ethiopian people who come truly being like the tail, being the lowest of low, the most needy in society, yet with simply because of their background, and their background is marvelous. Let me just say also, we want to preserve their history, their background. They come with wonderful culinary skills, music, tradition. We don't want to lose it. We want to embrace it and keep it, but at the same time to know how to assimilate into Israeli society as well. But they come looking like, I say that because they come looking like the tail. But you know what? I really see them becoming the head. And I think this is wonderful to see these people take their place, because they're bright, they're energetic, they're motivated. They just need the resources. They just need somebody coming alongside with whatever they need and say, you can do it. Here's the opportunity to step up and reach your God-given destiny, because God has called you to this land. You're part of this land. We need you. We love you. And I think this is the message that we want to bring to the Ethiopian Jewish community. You asked about some of the projects that we do. Our main project is with the youth and a home tutoring program. The home tutoring program puts tutors into the homes to help the children with their schoolwork. We have incredible success stories from children who were failing in their classes, who are now literally number one in the class through the incredible tuition that has been able to give to them one-on-one. And it's not just academic. I want to say it's also mentoring, because we're sending in Ethiopian Israelis who've already done it. They're succeeding. And, you know, whether they say it or not to the children, they're saying, I've done it, look at me, you can do it too, let me help you. And so that's an amazing project that we have. Also, vocational training fund that gives scholarships to Ethiopians to colleges and to become very practical in their skills for employment. Dental assistants, mechanics, electricians. We've even had some who are in higher education, in law, and others. We constantly get applications for help. And, you know, one lady who is soon to graduate with her law degree just is so grateful. She said, if you didn't help, I couldn't do this. She says, what would I do? She said, it was in my heart to do this course, but I couldn't do it without help. And so, you know, we're just so excited to be able to lend a hand in all of these areas. And just one more thing, if I can say as well, some of our tutors that we send in actually came through the program themselves, and they know the value of the help that they received. And we have a number of them that say, you know, I say, well, why do you want to help? Why do you want to become a tutor? And they say, well, I have received and I know the value it was to me, and I just want to give back to those that are coming up also in the community. And so, you know, this is exciting to see the replication of the good work that is happening.
It is very exciting to be able to see that. And, you know, we are very excited about the programs that you are offering and about the impact that they are having on the Ethiopian community. And First Century Foundations is just thrilled to be able to partner with you in those things. I know that you also have some, you know, opportunity even to offer humanitarian aid from time to time. And I think that's just incredible as well. Tell us one or two success stories. Can you share? I mean, even if you have to, you know, change the name to protect the person or whatever, but just share a couple of your favorite success stories.
Good. Well, you mentioned humanitarian aid, and although that's not our main aim, you know, if we do hear of those that are in need and there is no other way to help, of course, we want to come through with food vouchers and helping those to put bread on their table. But we had a very unusual request just in the last month, and that was from an organisation, a government organisation that is helping with the new immigrants that are coming into the land right now at this time. And part of their cultural program for the new immigrants to teach them Israeli culture was to bar mitzvah and bat mitzvah the young children in a wonderful ceremony. So they contacted us and they said, we want some clothes for them. We want suits for the boys and ties and nice dresses for the girls and shoes. Can you help us? And I looked in my cupboard, and of course I wasn't able to provide all of those things, but I was able to provide finances for them. And so they were able to buy those clothes for the new immigrants. And so I'm just looking forward to my invitation to the bar mitzvah, the bat mitzvah, where I can rejoice with the families and see these young Ethiopian Israelis learning what it means to come of age.
Yeah.
And So it's such a privilege, and really, really wonderful to see that. And another story, a lady who trained with us as a dental assistant, and a lady who struggled a lot, had lost her brother in one of the recent, as a soldier, he had lost his life for the sake of defending the nation of Israel in the last few years. And we were able to encourage her, we were able to support her, and she became a dental assistant, and she's still working as that and really thoroughly enjoying it, and has regained confidence and motivation to move forward in life. And so it just really thrills us. There are many success stories, but they're just a couple that come to mind.
Wonderful. Well, Jennifer, thank you so much for sharing with us today. And the programs that you offer are just giving incredible tools and resources to people to make it on their own. And I think that's what I love about it. It's not a handout, but it's a hand up, and an encouragement, and the mentoring that happens. I think it's just fantastic. If our people that are listening, if the people watching, if they want to know more about the Sheba Foundation, where do they go? And also, how can they help?
First of all, I just want to say thank you to First Century Foundations. We all play our part in this wonderful program that we're involved in reaching out to help others. And it really is holding hands with each other and playing our part to see this happen. But I would like to, first of all, I think I would like people to understand about the journey of the Ethiopian Jews. And I hope today I've been able to explain just a little bit about that, their journey, their sadness, their rejoicing, their successes, their challenges, to understand who they are. Because when we know somebody a little better, we have a heart for them, and we're able to better reach out and help. So just to understand their history and the price that they've paid for their Aliyah, and then the way that they're being raised up in society today. Secondly, I think to pray for those that are still waiting to come from Ethiopia, because families have been split. Families are still in trauma, waiting to see family members rejoined here in Israel, and then the journey just begins. It's very interesting. If you watch some of the videos of them coming and landing in Israel, you'll see them step out of the planes and they'll bend down and kiss the ground. They're so grateful to be in Israel. And so we want to see that happen over and over and over again. Every single one that is called to be here shall be here. So that is a way to help through prayer. And of course, lastly, through giving. Any of the projects that touch people's hearts, or just to be able to link hands with us, so that we can link hands with the Ethiopian Jewish community and see them rise up into their destiny and to become the people that they are called to be here. It's a wonderful time to be alive. It's a wonderful time to see the fulfillment of God's prophecies like this, and to see this so-called lost tribe, who wasn't really lost to God, but to come home, to come home to Zion after possibly hundreds and hundreds of years of desire. So to be part of that, that's a wonderful way to help.
And if they want to go to your website, where do they go?
Yes, you can find us at www.sheba.org.il. And so no guesses as to where the name Sheba comes from.
Exactly. Well, listen, Jennifer, been great to have you on the podcast today. And if you're watching, you're listening here in Canada or in the U.S., and you want to send a donation through First Century Foundations, that of course can be done, and we are happy to forward those on. And Jennifer, God bless you today. It's been great to have you with us.
Thank you so much. It's been lovely to be with you.
Thanks for watching. You can listen to this entire podcast on your favorite audio podcast platform. Find the link below. And while you're at it, don't forget to click subscribe and follow us on Facebook so you can stay connected to First Century Foundations.